CNN model can give it to some linear classifier. So what we have done in this particular example, like experiment, is we have used CNN as a feature extractor, and then that CNN we have used different architectures that I have listed here: VGGNet, Inception, V3, RaceNet, Exception, DenseNet, and MobileNet. And then we have given these features given by CNN model to our linear classifier. As a linear classifier, we have used logistic regression. Actually, we have tried with SVM also, naive Bayes also, but in our case, logistic regression has given good results. So in this paper, we have only listed that. At the end, after logistic regression and our output, we have checked that CNN has extracted which feature, and because of which feature actually we are getting the classification accuracy. So we have implemented one deconvolution neural network method, which is implemented by Zeller, that I have mentioned over here. So that we have done. I hope this is fine. This is the result that we have received for feature extraction. We have given all that 70,000 images to our all the models, Inception CNN models. It will take this many hours for training purpose. And later on, we have given the same features extracted from suppose Inception, V4, Exception, RaceNet to our logistic regression. And as you can see, this is the accuracy that we have received. Highest accuracy that we have received is 93.14 Exception model. But if you can observe carefully, MobileNet is the architecture model which gives 91.91% accuracy, and it is in rank 5 accuracy, it is 97.16. Now rank 5 is out of top 5, it should be there, the desired classification. It is there, so it is almost highest, and it requires only 2.17 minutes to classify. So this is the fastest model, and it gives almost same accuracy which is given by Exception and Inception V4. So in future purpose, when you want to create a mobile application, I think my personal suggestion is, and from our experiment, we can say that we can go for MobileNet architecture model of CNN, and it will give us good result. The experiments were performed in MacBook Pro, and everything is given over here. This is the deconvolution result that we have received. And as you can see, there are two things which actually matters when you are doing classification. One is the shape of your leaf, and one is the texture of vein on the leaf. That also matters. So both things are important, right? We have compared our result with already implemented papers also. It is quite good, 93.40 for our data set. We have not tested with their data set because like we are having our own categories of images available, right? From all this, what we can conclude is, in future, CNN is good as a feature extractor, but it will take lots of time. But if you want to get texture also from this leaf, there is a textural feature called GLSM that we have currently implemented for Mango. A same GLSM feature can be integrated with CNN, and then if we give it to suppose our logistic regression, it can give us more result, better result, because it will find the texture. So this is our suggestion of in future. Now this data set is quite like taken in very constrained environment. We have taken the leaf, we have put it on a white page, and then we have captured the image, right? 1000 image, but that is not good. We can go for a natural image also. So in future that can be easily done. We can take images in natural environment. We can do the same experiment. We can include some handcrafted feature. As I said, for knowing the vein of the leaves, we can utilize GLSM feature. And I think that will definitely give you more than 90% result. And it will help for a normal people. So it will be very useful. And it is not that difficult. It is quite easy nowadays because CNN is now quite common. So that's our conclusion. So this is what we have done. Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions, ma'am?
I would like to know as to MobileNet. You said it has performed the best as far as your experiments are concerned.
Yes.
So could you find any reason why you felt as to why MobileNet particularly performed better?
The CNN is a black box, so we don't exactly know the reasons, but it is faster. The results given by Inception model as well as the Exception model, both models are quite same as MobileNet. But MobileNet is having less number of layers, and it will take less number of features. But still, the feature extracted by MobileNets are quite sufficient to classify the leaf, because leaf are normally having enough shape. Now it is not quite same. So in such cases where your objects are not very same, they are quite different. In that case, you can go for MobileNet. It will almost give you same result which is expected, right? So that's why in our case, MobileNet has given good result, and we prefer that for mobile application that will be more sufficient, like more better, instead of going for inception or exception.
So did you must have considered some dimensionality reduction?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So how do
initially
you
the original images are of 2448 by 2448 pixels, which is quite bigger. So we have reduced it to the 300 by 300 pixels. So it is quite, then it is able to do the processing. But as I said, I think we have done the experiment on images which is taken in constrained environment. I think we should go for natural, and then we
natural. Okay, thank you, Mr. Sapan.
Thank you.
Sunil sir, you have any question, please?
No, ma'am. Just one question.
Thank you, Sapan.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Our next presenter is a Dean Nguyen Duc. Is audible?
Okay,
Yes, yes.
can I start?
Yeah, you can start. You share your screen, please, first.
Yeah, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm from Vietnam. Today I would like to present my paper, Unadaptive Control for Surrogate Assisted Multi-Objective Algorithms. We come from Vietnam, and my presentation, we have 5 parts. So first, talk about the algorithms, and the second one is research issues, and the third one is the primary part. It's about our proposal, and the fourth is the experiment, and the third one is discussions. We go the first one. You know, in the real world, we have many expensive optimal problem, which is it has finished function which require time consuming experiments or computer simulations. And to solve this algorithm, we often need to use simulation or approximate methods. This paper, we focus on the approximated approach. This effective methods using surrogate model is an effective technique at radio basic functions, polynomial response surface, Kriging, and support vector machine. You can see the formula for the model. We have the finite functions, meta function, and its approximated error. On the next, we show the formula for the model. Okay. And this paper we build up on KRVA is the well-known algorithm in multi-objective algorithm using Kriging. Is it a reference vector-based multi-objective evaluation algorithm using Kriging to solve many objective problems, and it's guided by the set of different vectors, and it predefined. And the idea of the algorithm is it divides the objective space into number of small subspace, and use a set of different vectors. And the principle of the algorithm, we're looking for the picture on the right. An additive selection strategy is employed inside each subspace, and using an angle penalized distance APD to measure the distance of the solution to the ID point and the closest solution to the different vector. You can see illustration on the picture on the right in screens. And the feature of the algorithms, Kriging feature, we know very important step is update Kriging model or training sample after the number of generation during the search. And this number is predefined and is constant on the time. We know we need to have a better algorithm. We need to care about two important characteristics. The first, we keep the balance between the exploitation and exploitation of evolutionary process. And the second one is that we need to concern about the quantity of the main population is obtain population in both conversion and diversity. In our research, we find that the complexity of problem sometimes is a black box. We cannot modeling or formula for the finished function, and the time periods evolutionary, the performance quality of current main propositions. And we think therefore it's right to update the Kriging model soon on net. It's maybe keep the better. And the issue here, we hypothesis that the hard parameters in W max in the algorithm should lack the balance of exploitation and exploitation, equality of conversion and diversity. So we try to propose an adaptive control for the algorithm. About the idea, we model the important factor in the formula, and the value of different information is automated adjust parameter determine the time for updating Kriging model, and the formula on the screen here, the meaning of the component we show on screen, such as NG is the number of non-dot main solution is the main proposition, and as a meaning of the part is the time, so we don't tell. And here we have the normalized function to ensure the parameter in the range of 10 to 50. Equity is calculated acceleration to the values W max. And about the experiments, we have Wello benchmark checks DTLZ by the contact in 2001. And we use the two metrics in performance measurement. ZD and IZD is the very important metric for the measure performance of the algorithm, and as a parameter which we set as default in the purpose of KRIA-VAs. And here some screenshot for the experiments. We have the two polygon here. The first one is for KIV is the orthogonal algorithm and the modified one, and we looking for almost on the problem we have the better. It's the value of the metric is smaller. It's almost better, but some picture we have not everyone in ICD DTZ3 we have not better than the orthogonal, and through the experiments we found that we indicated important factors, the effective time factors, and on quality and properties on the basis of maintaining convergence and diversity of population over the generation. And we propose to use a formula to evaluate the time to update Kriging model. It's makes an adaptive control for the algorithm, and each group so have hypothesis that the evaluation of factors affected the evaluation process to determine the parameter in the flexible way, and we contribute to the guidance of well-balanced algorithm, more about the quality of convergence and diversity to the search process, because the time is limited. So we search about the paper. Now we can you can ask me about question about the paper. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Din. We'd just like to know as to, you chose ellipticism as a selection method, selection technique. So what are the pros and cons of choosing ellipticism, and did you try any other selection technique as well and then went in for ellipticism?
So you can talk, you can say this more detail, and because I had to listen Indian English, so you can. Sorry, I'm sorry. So you can slowly.
Yeah, I said you have chosen elitism.
Yeah,
Elitism for selection.
yeah.
Yeah. So, did you try any other method also, or you only went in for elitism?
Yeah. Here we because on the origin algorithm after the fixed number of generation is the model it need to update. So now we can recalculate and it's can update soon or later. It depends on the current quality of the main population. So it makes the algorithm is more adaptive to make to keep the balance between the exploitation and exploitation. It not use the fixed parameters. It's the trend during the source.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, our next presenter is Atul Kumar Verma. Atul Kumar. Hello.
Yes, I'm audible.
Yes, audible.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Speak loudly, please. Like. Hello. Hello, Atul Kumar is not there. We hold their presentation. Our next presenter is Mohammad Sarfaraz. Hello. Mohammed.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Yes, yes. Now you can start your presentation.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
No, please share your screen.
Give me 1 minute. Can you see now?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. So nice to meet you all. So my presentation is about improving collaboration between government and citizens for environmental issues. Actually, it's a case study conducted in Sri Lanka. I'm a lecturer, belong to NSBM Green University in Sri Lanka, as well as I'm a PhD student of Department of Computer System Science at Sweden. And I'm the main author, and with me, I do have the co-author Shannon Han. So I'll carry out with my presentation. So these are the things which I'm going to discuss today about the case and how I collect the data and how I analyzed and what are the results and the lessons learned. So first of all, if I just brief you about my case, it means what kind of a case study which I have carried out. It is basically based on a particular deforestation issue which was taken place in an area in the north called Vilpattu. So it's the Sri Lanka, one of the largest national park, and the land area is 5,28,200 acres. What was happened was it was deforested due to various reasons, and it was made a major issue in the country. So as per the statistics, by the end of 2014, they have deforested nearly 3,400 acres. So a lot of people were talking about this. This is the main environmental issue. So what I did was to study about this particular case study. I just collected the data from the citizens and the relevant government authorities. When it comes to citizens data, what I did was I used Twitter and Facebook social media platforms to gather data. Through a web crawler, I just gathered data, and initially I was using some hashtags. Then there were like 558 tweets I just filtered from the 623 tweets initially generated. And addition to that, I use Facebook data. I use 15 active user profile with their consent. So altogether, I analyzed, and I was analyzing 793 tweets and text posts and comments. That is from the citizens. Then when it comes to this particular deforestation issues, there were like some people. Now there are 5 departments directly and indirectly involved in this deforestation issue. So I was interviewing people of this particular department: Department of Forest, Department of Wildlife, Central Environment, Army, and ICTA agency, Information Communication Technology Agency. What is interesting is to analyze the data. So when it comes to the citizens data, which I use content analysis as the method to analyze the data, you can see that like now a lot of people, they were like blaming and urging government to take necessary actions. So this was brought to this much of attention by the people of the country through the social media platforms. Then they were asking government to involve and stop this deforestation. And another thing we identified, there is another important thing. When it comes to this issue, this has converted to a racial issue. People were commenting positive and negative because like people identify this as a racial issue. So you can see the 55% on that. Then people like talk about the citizen attitude, behavior, and responsibility and protecting the environment. So then the next is people, the next category is they were asking people to gather and organize protests. So that is, you can see that is the next content which I analyzed. So these are the 4 main categories which are identified from the citizens data. So then move on. Then when it comes to the government authorities, I just I interviewed them and I was talking about this deforestation issue with them. Then there I use thematic analysis to analyze the data. So I found some interesting things. So even the government authorities, they were faced numerous issues involving in solving this particular problem. So they do have policy issues and the inference or interferences of certain politicians, and they do have intergovernmental and internal communication issues. That is the first theme which I identified. So the environmental authorities also had some problems in solving this issue. The second one is like now when I interviewed, they also
sorry.
Yeah.
You have last 2 minutes.
Okay. Then the second one is like I found that the social media platform has made a strong impact to solve this, to bring this into attention, but it was failed to find solutions. So that's what they were looking for, some other platform. They were suggesting to have a ICT-based platform between the government and citizens. The last one is government authorities, they lack information to provide certain environmental issues because different governmental authorities are involved in solving this issue. Then the last point, so what the study results show is that's a lack of collaboration and coordination between citizens and government as well as internal and intergovernmental authorities. Then there is one finding of my study, and also this study importantly reveals when you want to solve issues, there are different societal, political as well as governing structures of authorities involving in solving this particular type of issue. those are exacerbate environmental problem. So depending on this, as a continuation of my research study, I'm planning to develop a digital collaborative platform. I'm going to propose that kind of a digital collaborative platform for improving collaboration between government and citizens, especially for addressing environmental issues. That is my future research. So due to the time limitation, I just sum up all the things in this way. So hope it's given some idea for you all. It's time for questions and answers. So thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Professor Sangwe, if you have any questions, we may probably go ahead. Dr. Sangwe, if we have any questions. Okay, I think I'm not able to get across to Professor. So I would like to know from you, Sarfraz,
Yes.
what were the tools that you used for cleaning the data that you obtained from these social media sites, Twitter? And
Yeah, that is important. Now, actually, to gather data, I use a web crawler, but I did manual analysis because the data were like from the social media, I had nearly less than 800, but all the 800, I was taken them into Excel sheet and I had done the analysis in the manual stage. So that's what I did. So it was a kind of a manual. The thematic analysis, of course, again, I use NVivo as a tool to analyze the data when I'm doing the thematic analysis.
Okay. So, but since you're going in for an automated thing, you're going in for a tool that you're proposing, a collaborative tool.
Yeah.
So I would just make a simple suggestion if you allow, because see, when we
Thank
do
you.
manual analysis, it leads to some kind of biases maybe because we have certain things in our mind already. So if we have some tool that can be applied, that will add value to your.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarfraz.
Thank you.
Yes, our next presenter is again Atul Kumar Verma. Atul Kumar.
Yes, I'm audible.
Yes, yes, audible.
Hello.
Yes, yes, you are audible. Please share your screen. Hello.
Now my screen is visible.
Your voice is not proper. Hello. Maybe you have a network issue. No worry.
Then my screen is visible. Yeah, my screen is visible.
Screen is visible, but voice is not proper.
Hello.
Yes.
Isha,
Am
I
I-
think we have to
Hello.
go ahead with the next
Yes.
presentation because
I'm
he's still facing
Hello.
some network issue.
Yes, Kushali.
Hello, Isha, am I audible?
Your voice is not proper. Kushali, speak loudly.
Okay. Isha, I think Atul Kumar is facing some network issue.
Yes.
So we have to move forward to the another presentation.
Yes, sure, sure.
Please go ahead with the presentation. Mr. Atul Kumar, we will please try to reconnect or try to rejoin the session. We will join you and will provide you the last presentation of the session. Right, Bishop?
Yes. Our next presenter is Sneha Rose George. Sneha, I unmute you.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, good morning.
Good one.
Shall I share my screen?
Sure.
Please.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, visible. Double click. Yet not visible proper.
Is it okay?
Yes, it's okay. Now go ahead.
Okay, very good morning, all of you. I sincerely hope everybody is doing healthy and safe during this COVID situation. And I'm here to present before you on the topic, the conceptual framework model for opinion mining for brands in Facebook engagements using machine learning. And I have my co-authors, Mr. Sudip Kumar P. and Dr. Shine K. George. And my name is Sneha Rose George, and we are from Union Christian College, Aluva, Kerala. So, COVID-19 pandemic actually have created a new normal worldwide. From our regular life going to college, office, or religious ritual ceremonies, we are actually forced to be at home and get things done through internet. So here in this paper, we are trying to create a framework which will help to understand from a company's perspective or from a brand's perspective. As we all know, we'll start with the users and gratification theory that it is completely making the system working from on offline to an online mode. So here we are starting with the users and gratification theory, that the theory itself is being argued that what people do with media is actually been important than what media is doing with people, according to Elihu Katz. So that is showing the impact of a media, the effect of the media basically on people. So even if you are sitting at home idle, even if you are having work from home things to be done, we know that there are many things that is being done, like information gathering is being done, entertainment is being done, we are interacting with many people, and we are sharing many things using this internet. So here in this branding perspective, we have taken two things into consideration. The first one is brand information and the second one is brand interaction. Even in last day's newspaper also, even our Prime Minister Narendra Modi was saying, like, it has been said for the first time ever that there are more rural internet users than even urban internet users. So in this context, we are moving forward, understanding the social networking sites. As we all know that there are enough number of social networking sites available. For our particular paper, we have chosen only Facebook. And why Facebook? It has been data been shown here that according to VIA social statistics, the world's most used social platforms have been shown here, like Facebook, we have YouTube, we have, and WhatsApp, FB Messenger, Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, and many are there. But then again, the Facebook is the most widely accepted and using social networking platform among all. That is why we have chosen Facebook among all. And this is what the conceptual framework that we have created for this particular paper. As I told you before, that users and gratification that we are doing during this particular social distancing, we have only considered Facebook. And from the branding perspective, like if you are taking this brand interaction, we all know that during this time, people are all the time at home. They'll always have their mobile or they'll be completely on their tab or laptop, whatever it is. So the brands can actually interact with people. They are giving certain video messages. So video interactions are happening. They're giving certain contests. They are giving many informations. So the brand interaction and brand information are going hand in hand from the brander's perspective. In brand interaction, it automatically is being leading to the continuous involvement. Once you're getting into a contest, the next day also you'll get into the contest, the next day also you'll be getting into the video interactions of that particular brand. That is again been creating a brand reputation also. It is one way or other creating a brand recall also in the mind of the people or the consumers. Same case, the brand information is creating the brand reputation. They'll be giving certain messages like going for a healthy environment, going and supporting the people who are working for Corona and all those things, against Corona and all these things. So this continued involvement and this brand reputation automatically is creating a kind of bonding. All these things has been created from the literature review that we have already collected for the paper on the supporting data. And this bonding is creating this commenting or the behavioral outcomes, as we call, like in the Facebook, we have commenting option, we have sharing option, and we have the liking option being available. And these three things we are studying in the branding perspective. And for that, we are using opinion mining or sentimental analysis is being considered here. So here we are using...
interrupt you, Sneha, but
Yes.
your slides are not sliding, are not moving actually.
Is it
We
visible?
are still facing your slide number 1.
Oh, is it? Is it visible now?
No, it is not.
Okay. Can I ask my co-author to present the slide then, so that I can give the voice? Is it possible?
Right. You can show the slideshow option. Please click on that.
I have
You go-
already shown. I believe it is from my side. It is clear. The slide show is visible. So shall I stop sharing and do it once again?
Yes, now we
Yes,
can
yes,
see your slide.
Okay.
One machine.
I'll do one thing. 1 minute. Is it visible now?
It is visible.
Can
Yes,
you
it
see
is
the?
perfect. It is perfect. It is proper.
Okay. All right. I'm
Please go
extremely
ahead.
sorry because from my
It's
side
okay.
it was running. Sorry.
It happened. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Please
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So as we have come up with this behavioral outcomes, we have this bonding which is creating the commenting, sharing and liking. And this commenting we can actually get extracted, or the liking and the sharing we can easily understand from the branding perspective or the marketer's perspective, that whether it is having a positive balance or whether it is having a negative balance can be easily studied. And this studies, even there are many number of tools available. Like as we have seen, the Google Alerts we have, Google Analytics we don't have to do anything from our side. Like we have many other tools available, like people's browsers are there, Netnography is there. So according to the tools as we are available here, we have chosen machine learning. Why machine learning is that? Machine learning is actually an application of artificial intelligence, which is giving more scope towards quantitative data analysis compared to the other tools. It does qualitative analysis can only be happen. So here, the application of this artificial intelligence happening, it automatically will help in learning the data, and it will improve from its own experience. So that is, if we are programming that particular machine learning into a system, we don't have to repeatedly do this machine learning for each and every data set that we are putting up or installing into that. So that is the main benefit of machine learning compared to the other tools. And we have just mentioned some of the prominent machine learning tools available, like vector machines we have, naive Bayes we have, decision trees we have, and many other machine learning tools are available. So, and as we already know about this opinion mining, that is very important from the branding perspective. So moving on to the conclusion, this particular conceptual model helps in the brands or the marketers or the companies to identify the customers' opinion regarding their brands, whether it is moving in a positive way or it is in a negative way, which is the most accepted comment, which is the most shared product or the shared video or shared thing that has been installed in their fan pages or in their company pages, that can be easily identified and they can work according to that. That is all what I have to talk about my topic. Thank you. And this is open for the question answer session.
Hello, ma'am. You have any question? It's already mute.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I cannot hear you. Seems like Swati ma'am, you are
Swati ma'am,
muted.
please unmute yourself. You can unmute
Hello,
yourself.
Swati ma'am.
Swati ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yes.
Just wanted to know whether you have carried out any experiments to second your thought.
No, ma'am. Actually, we have shown it in the paper itself. It is this is a scope for the empirical study of this particular paper.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, Sneha.
Thank you so much.
Yes, our next presenter is Garima Sharma. Garima Sharma. Hello, Garima Sharma is here.
Hello, ma'am. Yes, I was trying to unmute myself. It is not working. Like now, I can unmute.
Then you are audible now.
Actually,
Okay. Let
you
me
can't
share my
unmute
screen.
yourselves because only host and co-host the rights. So I unmute you so you can go ahead.
Uh, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Yes. A very good morning to all the dignitaries and my dear friends. I, Garima Sharma from Graphicera deemed to be University, Dehradun, here is to present my work and my paper on effective knowledge discovery using data mining. So first, these are the topics that I'll cover here. First, I'll talk about the motivation that led me to work in this particular area, why I have chosen this particular work. Then I will talk about introduction of what my work is. Then I will talk about the proposed model that we have given and the experiments that we have covered for showing the result of the proposed model. So I have taken a real-time data set, and then I'll take you through the tour of that real-time data set and how it has impacted to the overall learning experience or the knowledge discovery experience using that proposed model. So all that we will cover in this today's presentation. So first I'll start with the motivation stuff. So everything, whatever we are working on, whatever we are starting, there should be some motivation behind it, why I'm doing it, right? So the same, the motivation I had for working on this area. So since data everywhere, everyone is talking about machine learning, data analysis, data, but the core and the natural thing which is existing in all of our phones, in any digital equipment, is the data. Though data has a little value on its own, but the meaning it carries is very beneficial. Like when we use machine learning, when we use convolutional networks, I was going through the slides this morning. So all the people are working just to make the meaningful data. The how to make that data that is being collected meaningful for mankind or for some intended purpose. So most important thing here is, if the right data we are feeding into our system, only then we can get the right decisions. So my work is on the data collection and the ingestion part. Like the main motivation was, if the right data we are feeding, the right decisions or the right fruitful information we can get. So the basis was, according to the survey done by Business Broadways in March 2019, the major challenges faced by various data scientists in the present is 36% is the dirty data or the grubby data which is getting fed into the dataset analysis, and which is leading to wrong analysis and wrong information or wrong decisions or erroneous decisions being proposed. So this was the motivation why I have chosen this field. So now I'll talk about data quality. So what is data quality? As I said, right data can lead to right information. Right information can lead to right wisdom or knowledge. So data quality is nothing but maintaining the standards or grades of collected data. It is a measure of data where we call its accuracy, completeness, consistency, reliability, and timeliness. So any data is purposeless or unacceptable if the intended use case, if it is being collected for, is not checked and maintained. So the quality have to be maintained in all the parameters that I have given. In this work, some additional activities are identified in the data manipulation paradigm that can enhance the decision-making capability of any mining algorithm. So with the introduction of new methods at the collection and cleaning levels, a data pre-processing algorithm is also proposed over here. The improvement in the overall knowledge discovery is being demonstrated using a real-time data set. So this is the structure of my proposed model. So how it is being run one by one. So first of all, anyone, there will be a data source, then next layer will be of data ingestion. So the data source will emit out the data, and the data ingestion layer is responsible for fetching that data. So I have comprises these three blocks, that is ingesting data, eliminate the column names mismatching. What exactly it means? Many times it has been seen like the column is containing a timestamp value, but it is in string format. So that column names mismatching with the format inconsistency, and eliminate the data type inconsistency. So all that I have comprises in a one go, that is data collection. Next is data noise and outliers. Many times had been seen like in the feature engineering, we call about data noise and outliers. But except the noise and outlier, there are other problems also that has to be rectified in analysis and cleaning phase. That is, detect the attribute relationship. Like we have a concept of correlation, so that has to be incorporated at the time of analysis and cleaning itself. Like what happens in many times we have seen in real time data set, like there is a zip code. Like for example, like I'm from Dehradun, so 248001 is the zip code for Dehradun, but that has been mapped to Delhi because of erroneous data collection done by manual effort or done by some machine. So that has to be changed, that has to be manipulated. You can make zip code as your primary key, and accordingly you can change the state name to the foreign key or to the secondary key. So that type of correlation exists, should be there. Detect and treat the empty and null value at the time of data analysis itself. Otherwise it will give a erroneous result and eliminate the duplicate records. The sequence should be in the same manner. Why? Because when you are treating the values, you are defining the correlation. There may be happen like the correct value is existing 2 or 3 times. That's why I have given this as the third part of elimination of duplicate record. Next is your feature engineering construction, that we are all aware of how to process the data, and then only we can go for data mining and knowledge. So my work is majorly in collection and analysis and cleaning. So this is a glimpse of the data set of real-time knowledge. So I had taken this data set from Kaggle. So it was about finding out the most prominent breed, or the New York Animal Welfare Department has released this data regarding the column name is animal gender, the birth name, borrows is nothing but the states, the license. So the problems that I have seen in that, like for single male or female, there were 3 types. One is male, MALE, another one is capital M, another one is small m. So all these we need to check, and the data inconsistency has to be removed beforehand. Other problem was animal birth name, the string data type. Like I said, the data type, though it is a birth name, so it should be time stamp data type, though there wasn't, this inconsistency was there. The third problem was, like I said, for zip code, there was a Queens. Queens is a state, so they were having Queens as 2-3 different abbreviation. State islands were having 2-3 different. So misspellings and these kind of correlation existing should be checked, and it has to be removed. So likewise, there were number of errors and the problem in the real-time data set. So the knowledge discovery, effective knowledge discovery we have got after implementation of the proposed algorithm is let me show you. This is like, this was the number of dogs present without cleaning. So you can check, these are the number of borrows they were there, because the states they were giving is, yes ma'am,
You have last 1 minute.
yes ma'am, sure. So the number of states were, n number of states were there, but after cleaning of the data, finding the correlation and all that stuff, so we had reduced it to this. I haven't used any PCA activity. It was just simply checking and finding the correlation and mapping to the correct value. The same way, there was no way of implementing this relation between the birth date and issue date. Why? Because it was different data type rather than timestamp data type. So by implementing our algorithm, we changed the value according to the column according to the value, and we have received this particular map. So that's all that we have done for this effective knowledge discovery. So I'm open for the questions, ma'am.
I do not have any questions for her.
Thank you so much. Ma'am, anyone, any question?
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Yes, our next presenter is a Navneet.
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, audible.
I'm going to share my screen.
Share your screen.
Yes, is it visible?
Yes, visible. Continue.
Yes, good morning one and all. I'm Navneet, assistant.
Hello.
I think, am I audible?
Yes.
I think I'm audible. Yes. So this paper is basically a survey paper I had done. This is a study over classical computing and one more thing that is called quantum computing. So major thing we are concerned here about here is a survey, right? So on what context we have made a survey here is, so let us understand here. In the world of computation, basically, as of now, we are using everything in terms of classical computing. That means whatever computer we take, it will be having two states in its intercore. That's what, 1 or maybe 0, or maybe high voltage or maybe low voltage. This kind of scenario we are using, right? So now with this kind of scenario only, we have developed computers in different dimensions. That is maybe a mainframe computer, or maybe a small computer, or maybe office oriented computer, or maybe a supercomputer, right? So these computers working in almost all areas, but all are working in the same scenario, that is basic is 0 or 1, right? Here we have analyzed in this paper a separate dimension of
Sorry to
computability, that
interrupt,
is,
Puneet.
yes, is it proper now?
Slide. It's the first page.
Yeah, a little explanation is there, then I'll.
And then
So in this paper, we are concentrating on more about quantum computing. Is there another level of computing apart from all this classical level of computing? That's what we need to discuss here. So in that context, first we must know what are all the drawbacks in classical computing. So if you come to know about this, then only we can think about quantum computing, how to overcome all this, right? So in that context, a brief survey has been made. So first, let us try to know what is the drawbacks of the classical computing here, right? So in that context, I have made some few surveys where some illustrations are presented, which will narrate how this classical computing is lagging in performance, right? So in that context, let me explain you illustration 1. So illustration 1 is very simple. Let me take 4 cards. Okay, you might be knowing all playing cards, right? So let us have some 4 cards, right? So these 4 cards will, each card will be having some face, right? Face 1, face 2, right? If you flip the card, it will be closed. If you open the card, its value will be shown. It will be usually A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to 10, then king, queen, or maybe jack. Okay, these are all the values. So if I give 4 card and flip the card so that nothing is visible, and if I ask where is the queen, as you see in this illustration 1, so 2, 3, 4 and values, if I ask where is the q, the probability of finding this q maybe depends on the calculation. Say suppose this q, if it is present at the first, means the probability will be 1 here, right? You can see here, at the best case, in one finding only, I can able to find this card. Say suppose this among 4 cards, if the queen card is at the last stage, right? So 4 cards are there, queen card is at the last stage, and I'm going to check one by one card, okay, each one by flipping the card, right? The probability of finding the card in this case is m minus 1. If m is the number of cards, means after finding 3 cards, if the queen is not found, that means that card is found at the last location. So approximately, if you write some algorithm using classical computing for this type of problem, so what we can write here is, using some method, if I return whatever it may be, maybe divide and conquer, or maybe some other types, or maybe a brute force method, the way I can write here is, it is going to check all the possible cards and ultimately it is going to find. So average case we can discuss here, that is m by 2. So at an average, we can get m by 2 findings to find the card, right? That means whatever may be the type of computer here, whatever may be the computability, the number of possible probabilities for discovering this card will be at average m by 2, right? My question is, can we increase in this speed with any other computing method, or maybe any other method? So this is illustration 1. This is where our classical computers are lagging. So ultimately, it has to do approximately m by 2 calculations if the card is not found at the first location. Yes, this is what classical computers are lagging. The question is whether we can find the card at one stretch only, wherever it may be, out of all the 4 locations. So next illustration is resembling this same thing, right? This illustration I had taken from the chess, right? Computer chess. So as we know, I hope chess is known to all of our there who are there here present here. Chess is played over 8 by 8 board, okay, which consists of 64 squares, right? So human chess players usually use logics, and they will play according to some pattern recognition formats. So out of that coins, they are going to find some patterns, and then they are going to move. But when same thing comes to computer thinks differently. So how it thinks is, it will go through all the squares, all the possible moves, and among all the possible moves, it will find one best move, and it will makes the move, right? So in this context, I have made some findings here. So you can see here in this move, let us say some computer chess engine is playing chess, and for first move, how many outcomes it will find first, how many possible outcomes it will find. Outcomes in the sense, how many possible moves that you can resemble here, right? So for the first move itself, if you calculate properly, maybe or white or maybe for black, 20 outcomes are there. So out of these 20 outcomes, one move it is going to find, and it has to make that move, right? Now opponent will play one more move. Next, again, computer has to play second move. For this move, how it will decide the second move is, earlier already 20 moves are decided. Among them, one move it will be playing, and after playing that moves, again, if all the 20 moves it is going to judge, previous 20 moves plus current 20 moves it is going to judge, a multiplication of all these 20 moves, right? So which will give an outcome of 400 moves. That means
Yes,
for the second move itself, yes?
Last 1 minute, conclude fast.
Last, how many minutes? Sorry?
1 minute, 1 minute.
Oh, 1 minute. So like that, if you proceed at some stage, we'll be having so many moves as 10 to the power of 120 moves. But this much of moves, if you are able to calculate, and if you want to find one move from out of that, it is highly impossible. So classical computers are lagging in this stage also. So in that context, we are moving to one more computing level, that is quantum computing. So here the basic unit is qubit instead of bit in classical computing. So qubit can be able to exhibit many positions at a time, that is 0, 1, R1, or maybe more than 0, 1 positions that you can see here. 0 plus 1 divided by square root of 2. So these are all the locations we can have. So, and this quantum computer exhibits two behaviors, that is, one is called superposition and one more entanglement. So these are all the two phenomena over which we can use this quantum computing on. And in past, some few experiments are done on quantum computing, so that it shown some of the highly exponential rated development in the computing stage. So this is about quantum computing, and nowadays quantum computing is a very interesting thing. It is applied in research also. Even government also released so many funds to do experiment on this. So that's why I was interested in that, and I have made one paper on this. So thank you for your listening. Any questions, madam? Sorry for the delay. A little problem happened in the network issue, so I couldn't able to completely explain. Any query? Any questions?
No, I think we do not have sufficient time left now. Just 15 minutes to go probably, and 3 or 4 more presenters.
Yes.
I appreciate your work, Mr. Navni.
Thank you.
I'm sure you will be able to carry out some, this was a survey. I'm sure you'll be able to apply your concepts to some experiments.
Yes, ma'am, definitely, ma'am. I'm doing work on that for the next paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Navneet.
Thank you.
Yes, our next presenter is Ashmita Deshpande.
Hello.
Ashmita, yes.
Hello.
Yes, yes.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, audible.
Yeah.
Share your screen, please.
Yeah. I hope my screen is visible now.
Not yet. Please share again.
Yeah, 1 second. Is it visible?
Yes, continue.
Yeah. My name is Asmita Deshpande, and I am a research student in the Department of Computer Science, Rani Chennamma University, Belgaum. I'm here to present my paper, Automated Detection and Counting of Red Dots from Digital Fundus Images. These are the contents of my presentation. I would like to start by introducing my topic. Diabetic retinopathy is one of the disorders that is found among patients who are suffering from type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Generally, diabetic retinopathy is found in two stages. One is non-proliferative and another is proliferative. And again, in non-proliferative, there are different stages, that is mild, moderate, severe, and the last stage is proliferative. Generally, automated algorithms that are there, they are used to detect non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy. For diabetic proliferative diabetic retinopathy, till now, I think most of the time we rely completely on the ophthalmologists or on the doctors for their expert knowledge to find out whether a particular patient is suffering from proliferative diabetic retinopathy or not. So my topic is to detect whether non-proliferative diabetic retinopathy is present, and for that, the earliest symptoms that are found on the retina of the human eye are microaneurysms and hemorrhages. These are generally red dots, very small, very tiny red dots, especially microaneurysms are very small, say approximately up to 125 microns. So a fundus image is generally taken, as you can see in this diagram. A normal fundus image and an affected fundus image is shown. A fundus image is a
Hello? Ashmita? Hello? Hello, Ashmita? Maybe it's a network problem. Yes, Ashmita? Maybe it's a problem. We can hold her presentation. Yes, we can hold her presentation. Our next presenter is Anish Sujani. Anish
Hello.
Sujani?
Yes, yes. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, audible.
Yes. Give me one moment. Let me share my screen. Yes. Is my screen audible?
Yes.
Sorry, is my screen visible?
Yes, yes, yes.
So first off, good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to be here today. So my colleague Shashidhar Pai and I will be presenting our work on 802.11 frame level network intrusion detection systems aimed at public wireless networks. So the growth of wireless communication and network topology in general over the years, both across hardware and software stacks, be it within commercial software or within the within research domains, has given a significant rise to the threat landscape. So these security issues, as we've seen, are no longer limited to just developers or the companies producing these software or hardware components, but it now has a direct impact on user privacy as well. The majority of current solutions when it comes to network intrusion detection is built on top of associated networks. What that means is once devices or services are already subscribed to a network and are operating within protocols within the OSI 7-layer networking model, IDS systems are mostly built around the network, transport, and application layer to detect signatures. So it works mostly on heuristics as well as behavioral anomaly tracking. So the problem with this is, especially in the context of, on the theme of sustainability, in the context of, let's say, a smart city, where we imagine that there would be publicly accessible wireless networks for civilians. We would have a massive scale system of distributed routers all across a particular environment. If we have to build IDS within associated networks across all these routers, it becomes infeasible due to the hardware and software costs ramping up. So what we need to look at is whether we can detect threats and mitigate attacks on a radio signal level. So before networks are actually associated, can we detect these threats within unassociated networks? So on that front, there has been previous work that has gone into looking at 802.11 security. We have had auto-encoded ladder neural networks, which is an approach to combine supervised and unsupervised learning. We have seen fuzzy neural networks for IDS dataset classification. Multiple machine learning approaches have been compared using SVMs, PSO for feature extraction. There have been Bayesian models, decision trees, and SVMs directed at particular attacks, for example, denial of service attacks. There have also been various approaches that involve firmware modification. For example, modifying the firmware of these access points or the client devices. The software stacks are written with certain thresholds and certain signature detection models. We have also seen protocol modification, wherein we introduce specific authentication mechanisms into the packets themselves. And on the electronics front, we have also seen electromagnetic signal monitoring to detect interference in these networks. The issue so far is, in a practical implementation, this is infeasible because it involves a lot of protocol modification as well as firmware modification. Now, going into the 802.11 standard, this is a set of protocols that have been designed and dictated by the IEEE, which dictates how devices are to communicate using radio signal over their physical and link layers. So it is a full-fledged protocol that provides control plane, management plane, and data plane operations for setting up channels, authentication, transfer of data, and error checking. So packets are transmitted through access points over certain frequency bands. A particular access point may support multiple frequency bands, and each frequency band may support its own authentication protocols and its own error checking protocols. These are negotiated between the client and the access point during the connection phase. So different combinations of these frequency bands, specifications, and authentication protocols have given rise to many variants of the 802.11 standard. So given that the current approaches mostly involve computationally intensive machine learning models or protocol modification or firmware modification, our goal is, given minimal hardware, can we formulate a scalable, lightweight, software-defined approach to 802.11 security? So we focus in our experiment, we focus purely on the management plane packets that the 802.11 standard offers. We have written a custom software pipeline that captures the packets, parses them out, and correlates them for different attack signatures. The frames that we are looking at within our implementation are as follows. So I will give a quick rundown on each of these frames. So a beacon frame. So you might have noticed on your mobile device or your computer, when you scan for Wi-Fi, you see certain access points popping up during the search. This is because these access points are broadcasting beacon frames out. All 802.11 access points can be configured to project the name that they carry, which is called the SSID, as well as the frequency band, authentication protocols, and other features. So beacon frames are what allows discovery of access points. Authentication frames are sent once an access point has beaconed and a client decides to connect. The authentication protocol is decided, and a four-way handshake occurs, which is called the authentication frame.
Sorry to interrupt you, Anish. You have last 2 minutes. Okay? Conclude fast.
I see. Yes. So association frames are used to synchronize sessions. Disassociation is to stop sessions, and deauthentication is to flush authentication caches. So our solution uses domestic 802.11b standards and a 2.4 gigahertz frequency band. So here we can see a solution overview. We have a multi-threaded solution where we capture packets, load them into a queue, multiple parsing threads manually parse these packets out, and we push them into alert specific queues. For example, we detect evil twins, deauthentication, denial of service, and unauthorized packets. Each of these alert queues are then pulled by another thread as a notifier and can be alerted to a central interface. So for capturing and parsing frames, we use a network interface card that supports monitor mode, which is able to listen for packets on a network. Here we can see the frames that we parse out for each of the fields that we parse out for each of the frames. Now coming to what attacks we're actually detecting. So evil twin attacks are basically when a malicious device can set up its own access point and broadcast the same name, the same SSID as a known good access point, which would fool clients into connecting to a malicious access point, therefore causing a man-in-the-middle attack and rendering complete compromise and interception of the data. We also look at forced deauthentication attacks, where an adversary may spoof deauthentication packets between a client and an access point. This would force the client to flush his authentication cache and would force a re-authentication. At that point, the adversary might be able to listen for the four-way handshake and might be able to brute force that handshake offline, thereby getting the encryption keys of the entire session, which would once again render a complete compromise of the client as well as the network. We look at denial of service or distributed denial of service, which we classify as a continued deauthentication attack. So if you start spamming deauthentication packets and preventing a client from connecting back to the access point, that would render a denial of service for that client. We also look at unauthorized device traffic, wherein if a device has already been blacklisted as malicious, that device should not be able to go to a nearby access point within our connected network and connect to that. So our test bed involved varying the number of devices as well as the number of packets per device. We use automated tools such as Python libraries, including Scapy, as well as browser automation to invoke normal traffic. We also had adversarial machines that would carry out these attacks on the regular machines. We measured two metrics, parsing latency and alert latency. And we see that despite the number of devices going up and the number of packets on the network going up significantly, we see that our parse and alert latency have a relatively marginal increase. So this bodes well in terms of building an effective solution that is able to detect 802.11 security attacks. And I know we are running out of time, so I would like to keep it brief. And I would like to ask if there's any questions.
I would like to know from you, Anish, did you come across any outliers in your while you were recording your readings? And if yes, how did you handle those outliers?
So the current test bed was done in a very controlled environment where we had 4 devices broadcasting normal traffic, such as streaming from Netflix, as well as pinging other devices on the network. And we had 2 adversarial machines that would pick randomly among those 4 devices and start booting them off the network. So our current tests have been done in a controlled environment, but seeing the graph of the results, even if we did come across outliers, I believe that the parsing and alert latency would be still, there would be a marginal increase even if there was a flood of packets.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for your time.
So Anish, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Disha madam, for unmuting me now at the end at least.
Yes, sure.
So I have one question, how your system is going to recognize the internal attacks, that is the attacks which are initiated within the organization.
Right. So, what we can do there is within the organization, if we have 2 access points, we would get both access points to whitelist each other. So on these 2 access points, they would know only of the other one. So they would record each access point would have a list of SSIDs and BSSIDs, which is access point names and the actual MAC addresses of those routers.
Because what all the systems within the organization are authorized one. Okay.
Yes.
So how you are going to differentiate that? Because this authorization is already provided, so they are within your network of organization. So if someone is going to have some initiation of the malicious attack, then how your system is going to recognize it?
Yes, sir. So typically within an organization, yes, there is radius authentication where each device would have their own credentials. Our experiment has been carried out on a network that has WPA2 PSK authentication. So it uses a shared key. for authentication.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you all for your time.
Yes, thank you, Anish.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now we have a last two pending presenter, Atul Kumar Verma. Yes, Atul Kumar.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm audible.
Yes, audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Please share your screen first.
Yeah, I'm going to share it.
Yes, Atul Kumar, please share your screen.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. We have a limited time, so quick.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Yeah, that will be the shareable, ma'am. My screen is showing
No.
on your screen. One
We
minute.
cannot see your screen.
One minute. Ma'am, better is that I start the next one, then I will actually rearrange these things actually.
Okay, no.
What will be the next one pending? Yeah.
Next we have a Ashmita Deshpande.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, there was a network issue.
No
so
problem.
I had to take up again.
Yes.
I would like to start from the point where I had stopped. This experiment that we have conducted has been conducted on the fundus images available from various publicly available images like eOpta, high resolution fundus image, fundus database, DirectDB1, Messidor, and Stave. Now, when we were gathering this data from different databases, we found that their field of view was different, image sizes were different, the formats were also different, and so we had to pre-process the data. This particular table is also showing you the number of healthy images, the number of deceased images, and the number of total images. Now, this is a flow diagram of the experiment that was conducted. The fundus image is the input to our application, in which pre-processing happens first, followed by segmentation. Segmented image is then given as an input to the next step, that is feature extraction and classification. Actually, two processes run in parallel. One is extraction and classification, and second is the counting of red dots which are visible on the surface of the retina, and then establishing the grade. We require pre-processing for this particular application. As I said, all the images are from different databases. They have different field of views, and their resolution is also different. There are illumination differences, so the way they are captured is also different. That's why we have resized the image and we have extracted the green channel. Generally, this is done because the microaneurysms, which are very tiny in size, are clearly visible on the when the green channel is extracted. Now the fundus image is converted into grayscale, and after that, the contrast of the image is enhanced. This is followed by segmentation, feature extraction, and classification. Segmentation is based basically on morphological operations and thresholding. Now the surface of the retinal image that is there, or the retina that is there, will have a lot of blood vessels and capillaries that provide blood to the human eye. Now those are natural anatomical structures which need to be eliminated from the surface, and hence we have applied canny edge detection. Hello?
Yes.
My screen is visible?
Not. Share your screen again.
Yeah.
And you have a limited time.
Yeah.
Yes. 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So once the segmentation happens, then we have extracted LBP features. We have worked with HOG and GLCM features as well. And different classifiers were tried out like KNN and others. For this experiment, we found that decision tree classification gives us the best results. And that's why we have used decision tree classification. The next process that happens is red dot counting. Now, red dots are nothing but microaneurysms as well as the hemorrhages. So counting is required because red dots indicate the progression of the disease. To what extent the disease has progressed, we can find out with the help of number of red dots that are present on it. So these are the steps. We read the input image, we set a counter to 0. We find out connected components, that is in the segmented image, those components with 8 connectivity, we find them out, and we every time we find the connected component, we increment the counter by 1. The steps 3 and 4 are repeated for all the connected components, and then the counter is checked. If the counter is between counter is equal to 0, the grade of the disease is normal. Otherwise, if it is between 0 to 5, it is mild. If it is between 5 to 15, it is understood as moderate. Otherwise, it is severe. So based on the number of red dots that are present, we can establish the grade. Now, these were some of the results that we have found on the images that were considered from the different databases. For eOpta, these are the different grades. We found 66 normal images, 106 mild, 121 moderate, 88 severe, and so on for all other databases as well. We classified the images that were present in each of these databases, and we tried to generate the confusion matrix for each of them, and we tried to evaluate the performance of our algorithm based on the classification results. Now, the decision tree classifier has yielded really good results in terms of accuracy for eOpta, HRF, DirectDB1, Messidor, as well as STAIR databases. For eOpta, the accuracy was 0.93, HRF 1, DirectDB 1, 0.97, Messidor 0.98, STAIR, we found the accuracy to be 1. Now, we have tried to compare our results with other papers who have tried to work on the same kind of databases. For eOpta as well as for all other databases, if you all can see this slide, our algorithm has yielded very good results. So I would like to conclude by saying that the proposes an automated method for segmenting of using morphological operation area where very little work has been done, that is counting of red dots to check the progress of the disease. Now we have tried to use LBP features and decision tree classifier, and we have obtained good results, encouraging results for our algorithm. That is all I would like to conclude. Thank you, and I am open for questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I had to go a little fast because we are crunching time there.
Sure.
Oh, please.
Yes,
Any
ma'am,
questions, madam?
Yeah, if Sunil sir has any question, he may.
Yes, Sunil sir.
So how your system is going to differentiate the accidental red dot and the red dot which is created due to the diabetic disease?
Accidental red dots are basically could be noise that is present, or maybe while capturing the image if there are any inconsistencies. Usually, I think I have missed that point in my pre-processing stage. We have done filtering of our images, and after filtering the images, then only we have gone ahead with the remaining part of the application.
Any specific filtering technique you have used, like
mean filtering we have used, sir. Mean filtering.
So I think generalized mean is going to have a good result as compared to mean, or double window modified and trimmed mean filter is also going to give a better result as compared to the simple mean filter. Because in double window modified trim mean filter, it takes all the pixels and all the issues, whatever the size you are going to consider, window size, that property it is going to have. There is no blurring at the edges also. It is going to consider the edge pixels. So that's why when in normal filtering, the edges are going to be blurred. The disadvantage of the normal filter is edges are going to be blurred because the edge pixels are not going to be considered.
Yes.
that is going to be removed by using the double window modified trim mean filters. Just you have to try with the double window modified trim mean filters, you are getting more accurate results as compared to what the result you are having.
Yes, sir. I will definitely try to implement that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ashmita.
Disha madam, I have a request to you.
Yes.
I'm having one online lecture now because we are running somewhat late. So at 11:15 I'm having a lecture.
Okay.
So may I leave?
Already, sir, we have done with all presentation. At last, I would like to invite Dr. Amit Joshi for closing remark. We have done with all presentations.
Okay.
Hello.
Just
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, Amit, sir.
Hello. Ma'am, I'm audible. Ma'am, Atul Kumar Verma.
Atul Kumar Verma is saying.
Ma'am, please, just I will take maximum 5 minutes to conclude our presentation. Ma'am. Sorry for delay, ma'am. Actually, yeah. Good morning, respected all dignitaries. Myself, Atul Kumar Verma from NIT Jaipur. Actually, I am a research scholar from NIT Jaipur. My topic is network structure analysis based on graphical measure and matrix. In this topic, basically, I have represent the social network occur when one person interact with the other person. Actually, in this research paper, actually we have done various objectives correlated to how we have proposed framework to detect suspicious anomaly in network. Actually, if some suspicious person will come, how we know that will be the suspicious or not. All these things actually correlated to our randomized algorithm, and by the help of SNAP tool and by the help of machine learning algorithm SVM, we have done all these things. State of the art correlative, we have seen various paper, all these things. Someone proposed some algorithm and someone given some framework. All this based upon all these things, actually we have directly proposed this algorithm. Yeah, what we have done actually, this framework actually, whenever we have any graph, that graph we have actually converted into a community in the sense that will be the densely interconnected graph. Based upon that densely interconnected graph, we have identified the motive. We've identified the motive. Based upon the motive, we have identified the some anomalies, and that anomalies we have identified some chat log by file. After that, propose that textual data, then feature extraction. After that, apply the SVM. Then we are able to identify that person is the suspicious or not. So better that take one of the example. Here is the one of the graph. Suppose that will be the 20 nodes and 100 days. What we have done actually, in that graph, we have applied some community. Here is the various algorithms. Here we have applied only the non-matrix factorization methods. Based upon that, we have identified the community detection. In this community detection, we have applied the motive. Motive in the sense, we have assumed some randomized algorithm, applied some structure. That structure, we have identified all communities. Based upon that communities, here we have seen that will be the some communities. So what we have done, suppose that we have a very large network. We can't be able to go each and every nodes and identify the which will be the suspicious or not. So what we have done actually, we have applied the some motive concept. Based upon that motive, we have only read that motive node. Okay, after that motive node, we have applied the pre-processed textual data, then feature abstraction. In feature abstraction, whenever any nodes have contains some suspicious data, that will be the point out to 1, otherwise that will be the 0. Whenever we have identified all these things, then based upon this matrix, we have applied the SVM. We know very well SVM actually that will be the classified to the different classes. The class will 0, that will show that will be the no suspicious person. Class 1, that will show that will be the suspicious. So based upon this thing, this will be the included. Actually, in this framework, why we have proposed that things actually, that will be the correlated to our NLP plus graph. Both we have combined it, and that will take a randomized algorithm. And definitely that will take a less time complexity compared to identify that will be the suspicious or not. Or main my motto is that we have done our paper in these things, all these references, and thanks on any question.
Thank you,
Yes, ma'am.
Atul Kumar.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Atul Kumar.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, ma'am, sir. You have any questions?
No, I think, sir, we're going for the question.
I would like to invite Mr. Dr. Amit, sir.
Thank you, Disha, for joining me on this session, and I really thank both of our chairs, Dr. Sunil Sangwe and Dr. Swati Chande from they have been great collaborators. We also see you, both of you, in the last conference as well in the month of May, and we thank you for your all constant endeavors and support to our research team. And I understand that it's a very difficult task to be sitting online for more than 90 or 100 minutes and constantly is listening to people and commenting on their work. And your gesture is really appreciable. I thank you for that. And I would like the team to just present a token of appreciation to both of our chairs in form of a digital certificate, so that because we cannot meet physically, but at least we can. So this is for you, Dr. Sunil Sangwe, and the next is for Dr. Swati Chande. You both will be receiving this certificate and a thank you letter just after the session is over. Thank you very much once again. And now my thanks are due to all the authors who have presented. There are some authors from outside India as well, and I really appreciate for trusting this organization and this conference for submitting their work. I am also happy to share among all the authors that this year in ICT for SD 2020 conference, we have more than 25% of the papers from outside India, and this is a good time that we are growing exponentially in terms of quality and the countries we are involved with. And we hope that ICT for SD, 6th version of ICT for SD will be a grand more hit in terms. There are two informations for authors that you will also receive your presentation certificates, your payment receipts, as well as a thank you letter just after this session is over on your mail IDs. Secondly, it's regarding the publication process. We have already sent all the data for paper presenters, approximately 160 papers to Springer in 2 volumes, and we hope to get the publication completed by around 4 months time in normal conditions, but it may take 1 more extra month depending on how the things go on with Springer and how many queries we are receiving from that. And in the middle of this process, if anything would be there, we would definitely let you know and we will get your inputs on that. Till that time, please be safe, and I understand that it's a 7 to 8 month cycle of a research paper to be submitted to a conference and then it gets published. So please being so patient during that time. You are and you will be, I hope that. And if any queries you people have, please feel free to write to our team or to personally to me. I'll be happy to assist you in the best way possible. Once again, thank you very much. I can see there are a few presenters from outside India also. So from wherever they are speaking, just good afternoon and good evening or good morning, whatever the time zone they are in. And thank you very much once again for joining us for this technical session on the day 2 of the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And look forward to see you once again in future events and initiatives. Thank you very much.
Definitely.
Congratulations for the successful conduct of the conference to the entire team of ICT for SD 2020.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to be here, to be a part of this vibrant event.
But we are not able to make it physical. But I hope that ICT for SD 2021 we will be physical and we will all meet in person and interact and share our memories.
Yes, definitely, sir. Yeah. Congratulations to the entire team again. Thank you, Swati Madam, for being associated with this session.
Thank you,
sir. Madam, for your kind all the support for all the time. Amit sir, for inviting me as a session chair. Definitely, we are going to be associated in near future also.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Disha Madam, please close the session after 1 minute. If anybody wants to interact anything on chat board, they can do it right now. And after 1 minute, we will close the session. So thank you very much from our side. Thank you.
Thank you.
chat is open for now.
Thank you, madam. I'm now leaving. Okay.
Yes, sure, sir. Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Swati ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Nice meeting you.
So now we end up the session now. Thank you, ma'am.